It usually happens when you least expect it. You wake up in the morning, and instead of feeling rested and clear, your mind takes a long time to settle in. Or perhaps you're in the middle of a sentence, and a word you've used 1,000 times simply isn't there. If you're over 40, these moments can feel heavy. There's often a quiet, underlying fear that these lapses are a sign of something permanent, that your brain is beginning to fail you. But there is a different way to understand what's happening. Your brain is one of the most energy-dependent organs in your body, and a significant portion of its most important work, clearing out metabolic waste, stabilizing memory circuits, restoring cellular function, happens not during your waking hours. It happens while you sleep. Tonight, we're going to look at 3 specific fruits that contain compounds linked to the brain's natural overnight repair processes. But first, it helps to understand what your brain is actually doing while you sleep, because most people don't realize how much is happening beneath the surface. Sleep is not a passive state for the brain. It's one of the most biologically active periods in a 24-hour cycle. During deep sleep, the brain activates what researchers call the glymphatic system, a kind of internal clearance process. Cerebrospinal fluid flows more freely through brain tissue during sleep, helping to clear out metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking hours, including protein fragments that researchers have studied extensively in the context of long-term brain health. Think of it less like shutting down and more like a nightly maintenance crew arriving after everyone else has gone home. When this process is interrupted, by fragmented sleep, by metabolic instability, or by signals the nervous system interprets as stress, the brain misses some of that restoration. And the next day, you feel it. As we move through our 40s and 50s, the brain becomes more sensitive to the quality of its overnight environment. It isn't that the brain is broken, it's that it requires a more consistent, stable environment to do the same restoration it always has. Part of that environment is what you eat, particularly in the hours before bed. Certain foods send signals to the brain that support deeper, more restorative sleep cycles. Others create metabolic noise that interrupt them. This isn't about perfection. It's about understanding which everyday signals support what your nervous system is already trying to do. Your nervous system is responding to signals, not failing. The first fruit is tart cherry. Tart cherries, particularly Montmorency varieties, are one of the few natural food sources of melatonin. Melatonin is the signaling molecule that helps regulate your circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock that governs when sleep deepens and when the brain enters its most restorative phases. As melatonin production naturally shifts with age, the brain's ability to reach those deeper sleep stages, where glymphatic clearance is most active, can become less consistent. External sources of melatonin-related compounds have received growing research attention for exactly this reason. Tart cherries also contain anthocyanins, plant pigments with antioxidant properties studied in relation to oxidative stress in brain tissue. Oxidative stress is a normal byproduct of the brain's constant energy use. Compounds that help manage oxidative load may support the cellular environment in which overnight repair happens most efficiently. A small glass of tart cherry juice or a serving of dried tart cherries about an hour before bed is the form most closely studied in the research context. The second is kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruit has been studied in clinical trials specifically in relation to sleep quality in adults over 40. In one well-cited study, participants who ate 2 kiwi fruit 1 hour before bed showed measurable improvements in sleep onset and sleep efficiency over 4 weeks. The mechanisms aren't entirely resolved, but kiwi fruit contains serotonin precursors, compounds involved in the neurochemical pathway that eventually supports melatonin production. It also contains folate, which plays a role in neurotransmitter metabolism, and vitamin C, which has been studied in the context of oxidative stress regulation in the brain. What makes kiwi fruit particularly interesting is that its effect appears to involve multiple overlapping pathways, not one dramatic mechanism. That's often how real biological support works, gradual, layered signals working together rather than a single powerful switch. The third is blueberry. Blueberries have been studied more extensively than almost any other fruit in relation to brain health in aging populations. The primary compounds of interest are flavonoids called anthocyanins, and what makes them significant is that they appear to cross the blood-brain barrier. Once inside, these compounds interact with signaling pathways related to neuroprotection and synaptic plasticity, the brain's ongoing ability to maintain and adapt its connections. Research over the past decade has shown associations between regular blueberry consumption and improved memory performance in older adults, with particular attention to the hippocampus, the brain region most directly involved in forming and retrieving memories. The full picture of how this works is still being studied, but blueberry remains one of the most consistently researched foods in the context of age-related cognitive support, which is why it earns its place here. Before we close, it's worth holding some nuance. Food is one signal among many. How deeply you sleep matters. How you manage daily stress matters. Physical movement during the day affects how efficiently the body enters restorative sleep cycles. Chronic stress shifts the hormonal environment in ways that interrupt overnight repair regardless of what you eat. No fruit compensates for consistently fragmented sleep or a nervous system that never fully settles. What these three fruits represent is something more modest but meaningful. They carry compounds that work in alignment with what the brain is already trying to do during sleep, not against it. If you're considering adding any of these to your evening, the most practical approach is simply this. A small glass of tart cherry juice, 2 kiwi fruit, or a handful of blueberries around an hour before sleep is the form most consistent with what the research has examined. Not as a treatment, not as a guarantee, as a small, low-friction signal to a nervous system that is already working hard on your behalf. Some people also find it helpful to track when they feel sharpest. A simple journal noting sleep quality, evening food patterns, and morning clarity can reveal patterns that are easy to overlook day to day. Environmental adjustments, consistent sleep times, managing light exposure in the evening support the same deep sleep stages where the brain's repair work is most active. These aren't fixes, they're supports for an environment your brain already knows how to use. If you've been noticing changes in your memory or your morning clarity, here is the most grounding thing to hold on to. Your brain is not a static machine that simply wears out over time. It is a living, adaptive system that remains responsive to its environment throughout life. Some of that environment is what you eat. Some of it is how consistently and peacefully you sleep. Some of it is the degree to which your nervous system feels safe enough to do its deepest work. Memory changes are worth paying attention to. Persistent concerns, especially anything that feels significant or disruptive to daily life, are always worth discussing with a qualified healthcare professional. This video reflects general biological patterns, not medical advice. But for the quieter, everyday question of how to support the brain's natural overnight restoration, small signals, consistent evenings, a little patience with the process. Regulation is gradual, and your brain is already trying.